The world of Assassin's Creed Valhalla is vast and expansive, featuring many characters both historical and new in this captivating time period, the early Middle Ages of England. As Eivor, you will find yourself adventuring across the seas to the new frontier that is England, but when you arrive, you will find a place that is inhabited by Anglo-Saxons, and today, ladies and gentlemen, I want to fill you in and explain the lore surrounding Anglo-Saxons, including their origins, but ultimately, this video will bring you up to speed and familiarize you with the state of the Saxon kingdoms when you enter the game. There will be no story spoilers here, but this will help you get a grasp on who is who and where is where and what happened when. Welcome to FudgeMuppet, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Scott, and thanks to the sponsorship that Ubisoft has so kindly given us, today I'm going to tell you the tale of how the Saxons came to be the dominant power on England. By the year 400 AD, the Roman Empire had officially left Britannia, and you may even experience the marks they left in the forms of various Roman ruins and structures throughout England at this time. This left the native Britons and the intermixed Romano-Britons to their own devices. Now, while the Western Roman Empire was busy collapsing, several tribes from northern Germany and modern-day Denmark took advantage of the fact that the empire no longer protected Britannia, or rather Britain as we know it. Among them were tribes such as the Jutes, the Angles, and the Saxons, and collectively these new pagan arrivals in England would eventually be called the Anglo-Saxons, though Saxon gets used for short. 7 petty kingdoms were carved out: Wessex, Sussex, Essex, each meaning Kingdom of West Saxons, Kingdom of South Saxons, and Kingdom of East Saxons, respectively. There were also the kingdoms of Kent, East Anglia, Mercia, and Northumbria. Now, between this first establishment of the Heptarchy, a term which refers to the 7 Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, and the time you will be exploring England in the late 9th century, there is a lot of change for the new people of this land. Chief among the changes is their conversion from their traditional pagan Germanic religion to the new religion of Christianity in the 7th century. Their traditional gods such as Woden, Frigg, and Thunor were tossed to the side and replaced with the new Christ god. This is why when you arrive in England, pretty much all Anglo-Saxons you meet are Christian. However, there's always outliers and secret heathens. The other major event of transformation was the consolidation of Saxon kingdoms, now numbering 4 rather than the former 7. Both Sussex and Essex had been entirely absorbed by Wessex, and Kent had become a sub-kingdom of Mercia, and later would become a sub-kingdom of Wessex before its total absorption by the same kingdom. Regardless, the 4 major Saxon powers became Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia, and Wessex. However, this was before the arrival of the great heathen army of Danes that landed on England's shores year 865. Northumbria and East Anglia would fall under control of the Danes, and Mercia would soon see the same fate, but you as Eivor will have a part to play here. At the start of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Wessex remains the true last kingdom of Saxons, the rest conquered on the edge of conquest or living as vassals of the invading Danes. So now that you have a basic understanding of who the Saxons are and how their Christian kingdoms came to be, let's have a deeper dive into some of the Saxon kings for the time period, some who are characters that you'll get to meet on your journey as Eivor. But before we get on to the future hopefuls of England, let's get morbid and start with some of the fallen kings that met their death at the hands of the Danes. First, let's start with Northumbria, the kingdom north of the Humber River. At the time of the arrival of the Great Heathen Army, Northumbria was already a place dealing with some civil strife. You see, with the help of some Northumbrians, King Aella had violently exiled the rightful King Osbert and secured the crown. However, not all Northumbrians agreed and claimed him to be a tyrant. Instead, they supported the exiled King Osbert. Most civil disputes such as this remain bitter and vile, and it would take something truly magnificent to unite the foes. But that magnificence came in the form of the great heathen army led by the Ragnarsons. This was an enemy that the Saxons of Northumbria could unite against, one they actually did unite against. You see, King Osbert and King Aella actually allied themselves as Northumbrians against the Dane invaders, but as much as it's nice to see some unity among the people fighting a greater enemy, it was simply not enough. King Osbert and King Aella were killed, leaving Northumbria to the whims of the Danes. Specifically, King Aella was infamously subjected to a particularly cruel fate orchestrated by the Ragnarsons, seeking retribution for their father's death. They made Aella a blood eagle, a terrifying execution that involves the cracking of the ribs from the spine and pulling the lungs from the chest cavity out through the back to create wings. A truly gruesome way to go, but that was only the start of the king killing for the Danes. Let us look to the Saxon kingdom of East Anglia. It was here that King Edmund ruled. When the Danes returned to Thetford, the place where they had first started their invasion, they would soon be attacked by King Edmund and the army of East Anglia. A daring winter strike that occurred late 869 or the beginning of 870 was designed to be the preemptive assault to catch the Danes by surprise and eliminate the threat before they could emerge again in the summer. Unfortunately for the kingdom of East Anglia, the Saxons were unsuccessful, and their King Edmund met his death. The stories say that he was captured and tortured first. When he refused to renounce Christ, he was beaten, shot with arrows, and finally beheaded. A display designed to induce fear, orchestrated by Eivor the Boneless and Uber Ragnarsson. The king became Edmund the Martyr and would become a symbol of unyielding faith for the Saxons. However, despite that small consolation, East Anglia had fallen under the control of the Danes. So, as you may well know, when you start your adventure in England as Eivor, 2 of the 4 Saxon kingdoms have been wholly conquered, and another is soon on the way. That kingdom is Mercia, led by King Burgred. In 867, the great heathen army had conquered Nottingham. King Burgred had married Ethelswith, the daughter of Ethelwulf of Wessex. This also makes Ethelswith the sister of the later King Alfred, which we'll get to soon. So, after the Danes had ripped Nottingham from the Mercians, King Burgred called upon his brothers-in-law to help him retake Nottingham, but the combined siege proved uneventful, so King Burgred resorted to paying the Danes off. So the Danes then went off to take East Anglia for a few years and attack Wessex, but they would return to Mercia again. By the end of 873, the Danes took Repton and used it as their winter quarters, and this is where you will meet Eivor and Uber leading the charge against Mercia, hoping to rid the land of an uncooperative king. But now let's move on to the final of the Saxon kings, and easily the most notable. King Alfred of Wessex, who would one day become known as King Alfred the Great. Alfred's father was King Ethelwulf of Wessex, who had 6 children who are in order of oldest to youngest: Athelstan, Ethelbold, Ethelbert, Ethelswith, who married King Burgred, Ethelred, and finally the youngest, Alfred. Alfred was not at first destined for the throne. King Ethelwulf died in 858 and he was succeeded by his second son, King Ethelbold, who died soon after and was succeeded by his brother King Ethelbert, who died and was succeeded by his brother King Ethelred, who in turn died 6 years later, year 871. And this is where we finally come to the crowning of King Alfred, the youngest of all King Ethelwulf's sons. As a young boy, Alfred was sent to Rome and confirmed by the Pope, Leo IV himself. This event in history would establish his life as a devout and pious Christian. Throughout his life, he had seen his brothers rise and fall as kings. He had personally fought alongside his brother, King Ethelred, in 868, fighting the great heathen army led by Eivor the Boneless, when called upon their brother-in-law and Mercian King Burgred. It is also worth mentioning that Alfred had often thought of the Dane invasions as a divine punishment sent by God, which only further emboldened him in his future missions to spread and consolidate faith in Christ. Throughout the following years, Alfred would take part in various battles against the Danes. However, most battles were unsuccessful, and when his brother died and the crown was passed to him, Alfred was forced to make peace and pay the Danes off in order to buy time. This is the Alfred that you will experience in Valhalla. The conviction, the mind, the man is made, but the actions that will make him great are soon to come. Alfred the Great would be remembered for reforms in education, military structure, as well as legal reforms, and one cannot forget his future successors as king, events that transpire after the events of Valhalla. Guthrum the Old is defeated in the Battle of Ethandun by King Alfred. Guthrum concedes and soon, along with many of his chiefs, was baptized, taking on a new name, Athelstan. Athelstan of East Anglia ruled as a Christian for more than 10 years, and as per the treaty with Alfred, peace was made and the two kingdoms would remain harmonious. Alfred is known for many more things than that make him great, but I would suggest a more thorough look at a historical video on the man for more information on that. There's lots of great history channels on YouTube that dive into depth about Alfred in particular. But there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is generally how the Saxons came to England and became established as the 4 kingdoms that you will travel through in your adventures as Eivor. So now you know the history of the Danes and Saxon conflict, you will now know what to do, carve your own saga in the land, and enjoy this time of history. I know I did. Thanks so much for watching. Please click like on this video, it really helps us out, and I'll be back to nerd out with you again next time.